to be able to go and do this stuff that I wanted to do, and I am aggravated. And this happens for about a week, and then we keep having to take taxis everywhere we go. When we're taking these taxis here and taking these taxis there, and then God it just clicks in my head one day. God just speaks to me and says, make the most of what you have. What do you have right now? I says, no car. He goes, okay, so what are you doing about that? Well, taxis are taking me everywhere. Okay, well, who's driving your taxi? Who's driving your taxi? I said, well, some dude. I don't know who he is. I'd talk to him. Well, don't you think maybe you should talk to him? Don't you think maybe he needs me just as much as those people way out in the bush do? Yeah, I mean, probably. You know. So God just puts it on my heart, make this your ministry. Make this what you're doing. So that's what we did. We'd go to town, and then we'd get a taxi to come back, and sometimes it was so awkward because there was a little bit of a language barrier, but sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes you're just like, hey, what's your name? I'm Zach, by the way, you know. And so do you have a family? Do you have kids? And so you start talking to these people and kind of getting to know them. And so by the end of, we had about a 5 or 10 minute drive, about a 10-minute drive to go back to where we stayed. So by the time we get back to where we're at, I've actually got into sharing the gospel with every one of these guys. There's probably 20 or 30 different taxi drivers in town that I got to interact with all the time. And so by the time we left, we'd led about 15 or 20 of those guys to Jesus. And it was something that wasn't in my plan, wasn't what I wanted to do, but it was God speaking to me and saying, make the most of what you have. Do the most that you can with what I've given you at the time. And so that was really neat, because that was my plan. It wasn't what I wanted to do, and I could have gotten really pessimistic. I could have been totally out for the count about it, and God just told me, you know, if He hadn't done it, if He hadn't talked to me, I would have totally been off kilter at that point. So other than that, I got to do a lot of cool stuff while I was there. You know, we partnered with a group of people. It was called BIAS, B-I-A-S, it's Bibles in African Schools. And there was this lady from Australia. She would come and she'd bring 500 Bibles with her. And we went to partner with her. We'd go to these schools, share the gospel, ask if anyone wanted to accept Jesus, and pass out these Bibles. And that was just huge, you know, getting to do all this. And by the time we left, we had led about 225 people to Jesus. And that's a lot of people, you know. And, you know, some people are really critical. And I can see partially why. They say, well, did you ever see those people again? Did you get to evangelize, or, you know, disciple those people? Did you get to pour into those people? Well, about half of them we actually did. You know, half of them we didn't. But sometimes, if you'll just plant the seed, God will water it. And if your mindset is, well, I'm not going to evangelize this person because I'm never going to see him again. I'm not going to disciple him. Well, what if everybody did that? And they went their whole life and no one ever told them about Jesus. But what if you just got to talk to them for 10 minutes? You just had this 10-minute window, and you went and poured into them. They accepted Jesus, and you never saw them again. But God worked in them. They went and saw someone else, and they started discipling them. They started nurturing something that turned into a true relationship with God. How cool would that be? So, I'm going to tell one more story from when I was in Zambia. And I was in this government building. We had to get our passport stuff taken care of. And it's 2 or 3 stories high. And I'm walking around on the first floor, about to go upstairs, and I see this guy, and he has his stick, and he's walking around, and nobody's there around him. No one's helping him get anywhere. There's 4 floors in this building. I don't know where he's going. So I walk up to him and say, hey, sir. I look, and he's blind. He doesn't have any eyes. And says, hey, is someone helping you get to where you need to go? You know? And he goes, no, actually, I need you to go to the 4th floor. And it's like, there's an elevator like this big that he would have to find, or he'd have to walk up the stairs. You know, so I'm like, well, let me help you get there. So I just start talking to him, and we start going up to where he needs to go. And he's just laughing and just such a cool guy. And say, hey, can I invite you over for lunch after we get done? He goes, yeah, I would love that. And this guy is a Zambian. He's born and raised in Zambia, doesn't have any money, doesn't have anything other than the clothes on his back, really. So I call a taxi, and they come, and we load up, and we go back to the base, and I do have this all on video, and I set up my GoPro, and I just start talking to him about Jesus, and talking to him about his life and what he's been through and all the things he's faced, and he's been blind since birth, and lives by himself, and does all this, and somehow I still to this day I don't know how he gets around as good as he does. It's like this guy's completely blind, and he moves and maneuvers all over town, and you'll be somewhere and you'll see him, and you're like, whoa, how did you get here? And it's so funny because I bring him in. We had hot dogs at the time. They had a little grocery store there in town. So I cook him 2 hot dogs, and I give him a bag of chips and a Coke. And I sit him down, and it's like, and he's done in like a minute and a half. And I was like, are you still hungry? And he goes, yeah, And I said, okay, well, I'll make a couple more hot dogs. So I make him a couple more hot dogs. I back sit him down, and I was like, are you still hungry? Can I get anything else for you? He's like, yeah, I am still hungry. So I ended up making this guy 8 hot dogs. He ate 8 hot dogs, an entire bag of chips, and a 2-liter bottle of Coke. It's starving. This dude was hungry, super hungry. So it's talking to this guy and lead him to Jesus, feed him physically, and tell him about Jesus, and invite him to church. We had a church there that we went to, and we invited him to church, and he comes to church with us, starts coming every single Sunday. And again, I don't have any idea how he comes, how he gets there, but he gets there. I'm like, all right. So he sits with me in church, and he can't see anything, but he can hear, And so after church every Sunday, we'd go and we'd eat and just visit and hang out. And this is another thing. This is another point I want you to really remember. Missionary work is not comfortable. Missionary work is not comfortable. It would have been real easy for me after church. I always just skedaddle home or back to the base and kick off my shoes and lay on the couch take Sunday off, just rest. And it wasn't always easy talking to this guy that was blind. Couldn't see a thing, could barely speak English. And every single Sunday we would go and we would eat, and we would struggle through language barriers, and we would help him into the restaurant, help him sit down, help him with his food, help him up, help him back out, help him into a taxi, and all these things, and it was never easy. And part of me was like, this ain't fun. You know what I mean? Like, part of me is like, this is hard. This is really hard because it's easy to just touch base with someone just long enough to do what you like to do and then go whoop. But when you actually get involved in day-to-day life with someone that struggles, it's not easy. And I feel like that's where the heart of God really shines, is in a place like that, a situation like that. So we're talking one day after church, and he says, my house is in really bad, where I stay is in really bad shape. When I say house, it's like straw, like sticks, straw, dirt floor. Okay? He says, my house is in really bad shape. I said, oh, really? Like what? And did that go out? Y'all hear me still? Mm-hmm. Okay. And I said, like what? And he said, well, there's a hole in my roof, and I go to sleep at night, and when it rains, it just pours into my room, and I get soaking wet. So I just sit up in the middle of the night, and I just sit there. I'm just like, well, that's awful. You don't need to be doing that. Let's get this fixed. So I go and I talk to. He actually lived in a little village outside of town. So we go there one day to the church to visit with some of the leaders. So I say, hey, do you know so and so? They say, oh yeah, we know him. He lives over this part of the village over here. So can you guys go take me and show me his house? And so we run across all this sand. There's nothing but sand in Zambia, so it's hard to get around. And so we run across all this sand and go to look at his house. And like I said, his roof was falling apart. Where he slept, it was just, there's nothing to it. He's got a little open fire where he would cook, and then you walk around this corner, and he's got a little mat that he laid on and slept on the dirt ground. And God just put it on my heart, we need to fix this. We need to fix this house. So I started talking to the pastor of that church there. I said, I'd like to partner with you guys. If y'all need funds, whatever y'all need, let's get this guy in the house. Or let's fix this one. Let's fix this house is what it was. Well, and then they started talking to him, and he was telling them all these other problems. And they came to me and said, we're going to build a new house. We'll split the cost with you. And so let's work on, let's right beside his old one, right beside this one, we're going to build him a new house. So they get one of their guys from the church to start building this house, and they say, hey, we need this, we need some money for this, we need some money for that. And I had a little, not much, but I had a little extra, and so I'd help them. I'd help them financially build this house. And by the time I left, this blonde guy that I was ran into, that didn't know Jesus, was starving to death. We had met, we had built a relationship, we had talked about Jesus, and he had started to have a real relationship with Jesus. We had fixed his house. And I look at that and I feel like God, out of all the stuff I did, out of the 225 people that we led to Jesus, and out of all the stuff that happened, I feel like that was the most like Jesus. Out of all the stuff that I could have done, that was something that Jesus would have done. Because, like I said, it wasn't easy. It wasn't something that I just did my hands in long enough that it felt good and I got out of it. But there was actual spiritual need that was met, and there was physical need that was met. That's something that you read about Jesus' life. That was he was constantly doing. He was meeting spiritual and physical need. And so, 6 months in another country, it will change your life, and it will make you view things in a completely different way. But I can also say that a week in another country will do that. What really changed me was my first trip, and that totally opened me up to the second trip. And so what I want to do is, in just a minute, what time is it? Dang, I have talked a long time. Wow, I'm sorry, guys. But I want to open up just a discussion for any questions that you guys may have. And I'm going to be totally transparent, totally open, and if you guys have questions, do not be shy. I want you to talk. This is back and forth. So the only other thing, I did end up talking a little bit more about my trip than I planned on, but the most important things to remember is you have to have faith if you want to do mission work. It says, what is it? Faith without works is dead. Well, works without faith is also dead. And there's an old quote that I heard that says, pray like it's totally up to God, and work like it's totally up to you. And that's what it takes. If you're going to decide that this is something that you're passionate about, you want to make trips, you want to go on annual trips, you want to do these things, you can't just decide you want to go and then just sit back and wait for God to make it work. If you decide you want to go, God has already put his hand on it, he's already blessed it, but you have to work from that point on to make it a reality. You have to pour into it to make it happen. And I've heard thousands of stories, literally, I've probably heard thousands of stories about missionaries that didn't have the money they needed all the way up to the day they left. And somehow, some way, in this random act of God, they got what they needed. It was because they had faith. We're going no matter what. If we don't have the money, if all we have is enough money to get on the plane, and we're going to get there, we're going to be broke, we don't have nothing, we're still going to go. Because God told us that he would provide and he would make it happen. Okay? So you've got to have faith. Totally have to have faith.